what about, and Alex, if you can, like, one last question I think is important for us. If we look to the future for a second, when we're talking about mobile applications, 2 to 4 years from now, how is this process going to be changing? And if we had the same conversation, say, several years, a few years in the future, what will we be talking about in terms of mobile application development?
Sure. Yeah, I think you're already starting to see this. I think one kind of important pattern is you're going to be having a lot more smaller interactions, maybe across different types of devices, versus one device, one application you're going to open and just stay in that application. So you're even starting to see that with iOS application. Have the extension capability where different apps, you can kind of sew together an experience through all these different applications that kind of call each other through the interaction, essentially. So it's not just one major app, and as well as wearables and things like that will kind of enhance this as well. So you can kind of start an interaction maybe on the iPhone and then go to your watch and then go to a smart home. So more and more of these types of devices are going to start proliferating. So you're going to have to kind of think of it as a system perspective, not just an app perspective. How do you tie together all these different interactions? I mean, another example is beacons, kind of location-specific technologies that kind of will tie into where the location is, where inside your ad, and then tie that into your app as well. So I think we're starting to see that too. So that's one thing that I don't think anyone's mentioned is you don't want to kind of start with for example, your web applications. You don't necessarily want to translate that directly to your app. And this is going to be more and more important as these types of interactions start happening. Is that you don't want to just take your web page and build a direct application with that. You want to think of what the user's going to be doing, what the tasks, the goals are, and how they're going to be interacting across all these different types of devices. So that's one thing. And then I'm curious to see how the different technologies play out, because right now you have to, when you're writing a native app, you have to write one in, Android, iOS, and it could be all different type of technologies. So I think, I see some things that are more technologies that are familiar to it, more people like JavaScript and React Native that are coming out. So hopefully there'll be kind of an easier experience to develop these apps across, the different platforms. Not necessarily write once, run many, but just where you can kind of be familiar with one technology and kind of write all these different aspects of it.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? There are these two major competing platforms that need different code. It's sort of like it says this whole technology is very much in its infancy. We need one platform somehow. Like I said, it's a larger philosophical discussion which we can't solve today.
I think we're actually going to be talking about the same question in 2 to 4 years, and the battle is still kind of ongoing between HTML5 versus native apps, and that's I think it's obviously a trade-off, but I think it is becoming easier and easier to do that. So hopefully that trend will continue in the future as well.
Ruben, what does the future hold? Where are we going? Looking into your crystal ball, what's going to be 36 months from now, a huge amount of time from now, in the world of mobile apps?
Well, I think it's always dangerous to try to predict the future, especially in technology, where everybody's trying to change it every minute. But I mean, I can tell you just near term, some of the higher quality applications out there have a strong consideration for the offline experience. And so if you look at apps, a lot of apps are built with the assumption that the cellular network's available everywhere. And a simple example is you walk into an elevator in a large building and the app is off. Now what does it do? How does it behave? So I think just simply better ways of dealing with the offline experience, bringing that more into the platform level rather than having each app deal with it individually. I think that'll be sort of a key area people will continue to evolve and develop. Certainly, as Alex mentioned, all of the additional devices that are now sort of using the app on your phone as a hub, I think that is a really interesting space. And we've got things like the watch, smartwatches, which get a lot of press as companion devices. But I think you can think of a lot of other things that are more stationary and embedded in your everyday life. Your television, your thermostat, your lights, your car, all of these things. And every single one of those things I mentioned has multiple companies investing lots of money in making them full-fledged computers that can run their own apps. So now you have to start thinking of an app not as a standalone thing, but as a participant in an ecosystem of other apps. And they all have to communicate with each other and synchronize with each other and kind of work together. So your app has to know you got home and let you know that now you can turn on your TV, or all of these kind of intelligent things. So I think that's an area that, as the infrastructure gets built out, we'll see a lot of implications for everyday app developers to consider. And then lastly, I think and I won't go into the cross-platform issue because Alex covered that pretty well. But I think also another area is the international market and designing for different languages, different cultures, and different form factors of phones that are accepted around the world, and sort of cross-cultural pollination of applications. WhatsApp is a great example of an app that was able to do really well because they figured out what the different kinds of phones are, feature phones in different countries, and optimize and develop for that. But I think as we exhaust markets over here, in the West, we'll start looking east to see if we can get into those markets, and that's going to cause a little bit of growing pain for us, and potentially vice versa.
Makes sense. I think sometimes my phone wants to call my refrigerator. And those two things are going to have a conversation. I don't know what they're talking about, but they seem to be communicating constantly. Tim, the future, a few years from now, what are we going to be talking about when we talk about mobile?
Both we're thinking not conservatively enough and not liberally enough at the same time. That's what I always do to predict the future. But you're not going to get away from two platforms. You're going to have an explosion of platforms. I mean, the Internet of Things. As the processing power develops, the limitations of the phone stop being limitations and they become more and more supercomputers. Mm-hmm. Simultaneously, then we have an explosion of form factors of watches and devices getting powerful enough not to be firmware, but almost approaching real OSs. I mean, they have been for quite a while now. But
we're talking about serious platforms between iOS and Android, and a real major platform in addition to those two.
Well, I'm saying all the Internet of everyone trying to win the Internet of Things, and then iOS is exploding into that. So even if Android and iOS are the big mobile ones for a while, even those continue to get more complex. And at the same time, as you have extensions and you have use cases that make your phone more of a true computer, you start getting new devices where it's, again, different form factors that are limited. And how does your car work and how does your phone work? And no one in the last 20 years has wanted to seed the living room, so there's not an easy Internet of Things answer. Everyone wants to be the hub. Everyone wants to connect all these, so there's just platforms fighting it out. And Apple obviously has its slow-moving entry where it creeps iOS into everything methodically, and then Android does its approaches, and then all the the Asian manufacturers, Samsung's, all try to do their approach. So I certainly do not predict you seeing there be any less platforms in the near future. The definition of mobile might start to get a little kludgy.
Right.
That's why people talk about touch a lot, because the interfaces are what matter. Like whether or not it's mobile it is touch at a certain size and connectivity, and what's the interface you're watching, what's the interface of your car. Is your car a mobile? It's the original most mobile of mobiles, but you say programming for it is a mobile. Not right now, but what happens when there is iOS on your car? What does that look like?
Right.
So the platforms, even if they just stayed those two big winners, which they aren't, they're going to explode in complexity of how you build for them. So the definition will start to become, what do you mean by mobile? There's going to be plenty of work to build phone apps, though, for the foreseeable future, and just like Internet 6 stayed around forever, the phones stay around for long enough that it's what's your base case of your lowest level model of your phone that you're worried about. So there will be quote-unquote mobile developers, but there will also be whole new realms of what that actually means. And yeah, don't forget that there were feature phones, but within 2 days of your phone getting stolen, it's almost actually shipped somewhere else. To Africa and some other developing nations. Like the smartphones are going everywhere, and when you sell them, they end up everywhere. That it won't be feature phones everywhere. This is a lot of the world's computer and web browsing experience.
Right.
If you don't think that will explode in ways we haven't yet figured out, that Silicon Valley's sort of myopic view of its own needs hasn't figured out yet, then I think we'll be surprised.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
think one other thing that I don't think we mentioned is kind of the enterprise. I think that's one untapped market that we're going to see a lot more mobile adoption in as well, and
Yes.
building kind of more mobile-based apps that target your specific enterprise. I think that's another huge trend that's going to happen, and a lot more work available for that.
I have long been a proponent of enterprise developers and enterprise people being people too, so we need to save them from .NET and like old like J2EE. I've definitely taught like Ruby seminars at giant enterprises before, and the level of tooling that exists is such that it's recently flipped on its head. When Pivotal did their relaunch and rebrand, they said consumer-grade applications or for the enterprise or something like that. Where rather than talking about enterprise grade, everyone's finally admitting the enterprise is so far behind on the consumer experience that there's just, we definitely have some clients that we're doing a lot of work on in the enterprise for like modernizing their sales tools for a tablet experience for the showroom floor, for instance.
Interesting. Well, there are clearly many, many changes, and I think the word is explosion. I think, Tim, I agree with that word, explosion. There'll be no simplicity is not in our future. That I can guarantee you.
Yep.
Gentlemen, I greatly appreciate your expertise. I'll send you the link. We can all tweet about it, and we can all view it on our smartphone. And thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks.
Good luck,
Thank
James.
you.